So I know that I was in like the last class and I was talking to Nada, and she's like, Mr. Bullens, we're going to go over that stuff for the vocabulary for this week. And I was like, yeah, we're going to go over that. I was like, but let's think about some of this stuff, like habitat reduction. Like, I don't have a slide for habitat reduction because, number one, you know that habitat is the place where an animal or a plant naturally lives and grows. You know that the word reduce means to lower or take away. You put the two together and you are lowering and taking away the place where a plant and animal naturally lives and grows. Basically, like if you burn something, like burn a forest down, you chop the forest down, you put a giant mall where the forest used to be, you are reducing the habitat for all the creatures that live there. We talk about that, but it's not a slide. I'm not going to write that on the anchor chart. Ecology. I just want you to know what that word is. Anytime you see the O-L-O-G-Y, that means the study of. So it's biology, the study of life. Ecology is the study of how living and non-living things interact, those biotic and abiotic factors. So if you want to be an ecologist, that sounds like a fun thing to do. Biotic factor and abiotic factor, if you don't know that by now, we're in big trouble, right? Environment. Environment, if you live in the desert and you live in, let's say, the tundra, you are in two different environments, right? The conditions that help keep you alive are different in those two places. So again, not one that I'm necessarily going to have a slide for because it's just words that we go over. And we've been covering the word ecosystem, well, since the very beginning of this because the title of the unit is ecosystems. Deciduous forest. We've said that word 100 times. Matter of fact, I think that was one of the first weeks of morning work. We had that word deciduous forest, and we know that that's where we live. And starting tomorrow, since tomorrow's October, I'm starting to look at the trees a little closer every day because it's about that time of year when they change color, right? Sometime in here. So that leaves three words, three vocabulary words I think that we need to cover today. And we're going to cover that on these three slides. The cycles in an ecosystem. Now, one of them you already know, the water cycle. And if you don't know it now, I think I cover it 6 times throughout the year. Like thoroughly. You will know the water cycle backwards and forwards by the time the year's over. But you need to understand how you can identify the different cycles and what they do and how they can change and manipulate the way that an ecosystem can survive. We're going to start with the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen cycle. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you, Walker. There's literally no way. Well, there is a way. I don't think there's a way that you should miss the definition of nitrogen cycle because if I look at my vocabulary sheet, it says the continuous trapping of nitrogen. It literally says the word in the definition. And then carbon cycle is the continuous exchange of carbon, and water cycle is the cycle where Earth's water. You shouldn't miss them on a quiz when I give you the definition. That's an easy thing. But I do want you to have a little bit of an understanding of what the nitrogen cycle is. Do I need you to memorize how nitrogen moves from a gas to the soil and how it breaks down into ammonia, then nitrites, then nitrates? No, you do not have to memorize that path, but we're going to watch some things and learn a little bit about that. Nitrogen is extremely important. I need it to live. The plants in my window need it to live. Unfortunately, breathe in for me. We just took in nitrogen because it's in the atmosphere, but breathe out. And the nitrogen just came back out. So how am I supposed to get this all-important nitrogen that I kind of have to have? It has to get into our system through a pretty funky way. Pretty wild how this happens. Again, we breathe in, we can't use it. The plants, same thing. They can't take it in through the air either. It would be super awesome if I had something in an ecosystem that would just break things down for me into its useful parts. Do I have anything that would do that for me? Yes. Decomposers, bacteria can do that job. So nitrogen will get into the soil. We're going to do a really fun thing where we get like this passport and we become a nitrogen molecule and we start bouncing all over the place and we have to get our stamps and our passport next week. That's a lot of fun. But nitrogen can get in the soil from a lightning strike. It can get there from the rain. It can get there when a cow dies and is broken down by decomposers. It can get there when a cow takes a poop and then the poop is broken down. I know y'all giggle every time I say that, but we talk about that a lot this year. because bacteria break things down. Now, when I said bacteria breaks things down, we've said it breaks things down into nutrients and good soil, right? Now you're starting to understand inside that nutrients part some of the actual things that it's breaking down. And one of the things it's releasing is nitrogen. So, nitrogen in the soil from the lightning strike, right? The plant looks at that and says, I still can't really use that. So some bacteria breaks it down into ammonia. The plant looks at that and says, dude, like I said, I can't use that. I can't use that either. So some other bacteria rolls in, and it breaks the ammonia into nitrites. And the plant says, I hate to be a nudge, but I can't use that either. If you could just break it down one more time for me. And they break it down into something called nitrates, and the plant says, sweet, I can use that. And it's able to take in the nitrogen and then go through the process of photosynthesis and change things into sugars and start living. But how do I get nitrogen into my body? I certainly don't want to get struck by lightning. I can't breathe it in. I can't breathe it out. I'm not going to stick my feet in the dirt and pray that ammonia and bacteria do their thing and it gets absorbed through my feet. How am I going to get nitrogen into my body? Rachel, what do you think? Eating a plant or eating an herbivore that eats the plants, right? That's the simple way that it works. Nitrogen cycle. Again, thanks to nitrification, the plants get what they need, but animals get it by eating. We get it by eating plants or eating plant-eating animals, or if you eat a taco, you might have salad and beef on there, so you're getting it both ways, right? So there, I said it, tacos are healthy because they have nitrogen. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself this weekend when I have some more tacos. Decomposers doing their job. When plants die, when animals die, decomposers break them down. Part of what they're releasing into the soil and back into the atmosphere is nitrogen. So it's kind of wild. So here I am on my nitrogen molecule. I travel down like Shazam, pow, into the soil from a lightning bolt. Bacteria breaks me down 4 or 5 times. I end up in a plant. A cow comes by, eats the plant, right? I come out the backside of the cow. Decomposers break me down. I go into the soil again. A plant takes me up again. A cow eats me. The cow dies. And I'm broken down again. And it's this constant movement. And it's this zigzag. It's not a nice little circle like the water cycle. It's a zigzag movement of the way nitrogen bounces back and forth into the atmosphere. If you are at home, I would recommend watching this video, because after you watch this video, if I didn't explain it very well, these guys on Study Jams knock it out. So we're going to watch that here in just a second. So how do I put all of that, Mr. Bull, and did just like some quick notes? I'm glad you asked. Nitrogen cycle. There it is. Nitrogen gas in the air makes its way to the soil, where decomposers break it down so that plants can use it. Consumers get nitrogen by eating plants or eating herbivores. So just to say this one more time, Dylan, then I'll get your question, I promise. Nitrogen cycle is the recycling of nitrogen, where decomposers break it down so plants can use it, and then animals get nitrogen by eating plants or eating herbivores. I don't need you to know all the steps. The video is very explanatory, but you don't have to memorize all that. Just like the short version of the nitrogen cycle. And we'll come back once the video is over and watch all the videos together. Carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is probably one that you already kind of understand. You've understood this for a while. I breathe in oxygen, I breathe out carbon dioxide. The plant, quote unquote, breathes in carbon dioxide and breathes out oxygen. And that's one portion of the carbon cycle that's pretty fantastic that we need to understand. It's that continuous movement of carbon back and forth into the environment. So some other portions of the carbon cycle, we'll talk about the greenhouse effect. There are gases, and that would be carbon dioxide, that help trap heat in our atmosphere. And you're probably thinking that's a bad thing. No, that's a good thing that those things trap heat. Otherwise, the earth would be too cold for us to live on. Again, plants using carbon dioxide, they breathe it in, they release oxygen. We breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. And that's one part of the carbon dioxide or the carbon cycle that I think everyone in here is pretty familiar with. Carbon is the building block for life. When you get into chemistry, hopefully some of you take chemistry, you're going to learn about carbon. Carbon is like that Lego piece that you have to put in every single thing that you build. And everything else will attach to that in different ways and different shapes. But it's that one piece that you have to build everything. It's really, really important. Sort of. We know carbon moves from plants to humans and from humans back to plants. But carbon is also inside of things. So here's our friends decomposers again. When something dies, and we said decomposers break down dead things, not only are they releasing nitrogen, they're also releasing carbon out of that dead thing as well. And that carbon can go either into the ground or back into the atmosphere. If carbon gets trapped for a long time underground, it can turn into coal and oil. And that causes an issue, at least according to some scientists. When you burn too many fossil fuels, you're releasing carbon back into the atmosphere and that carbon dioxide. And when you release that carbon dioxide back into there, if it's too much, some scientists say that the Earth can trap too much heat, and that's what leads to global warming. There's other scientists that disagree with that, but we can talk about that later on. We will watch this. If you're at home, you need to watch this as well. I'm going to slap up some notes on the carbon cycle really quickly. Super short, condensed notes on the carbon cycle. Carbon is in everything. Humans breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Decomposers break down dead things, and one of the things released from that is carbon. Now, I know this should not be new to you. You have studied the water cycle before. And let's just say for some weird reason you've made it through all of school and not studied it. You're going to study it about 6 times this year. It comes up in everything we study, from ecosystems, obviously in weather, chemical and physical changes, everything. Heat exchange. It's that movement of water from the earth to the air, back to the earth again. When water changes from liquid to gas to liquid, which is you have liquid water that evaporates and it condensates and it precipitates, which is that change that you see there. I'm going to watch that. Again, puddle of water is chilling there. The sun heats it up, the water goes away. It doesn't just disappear into nothing. It's turned into a gas. That gas has evaporated, or the liquid's evaporated. It goes up into the atmosphere, and it goes through a process called condensation. Now, I want everybody to say this with me down here. Condensation is cloud formation.
Condensation is cloud formation.
You're going to get really tired of that phrase by the end of the year because we're going to say it all the time. But again, you won't miss what happens when it's condensation because you're like, oh, that's when clouds form. I promise you will need to know that. So clouds form. They're just teeny tiny droplets of water. Millions and millions, zillions of little drops of water in the sky. I can see them right there because they form clouds. Eventually those water droplets get together and they fall down as in the form of precipitation. That could be rain, sleet, snow, or hail, depending on what the temperature is outside. And so you have that movement of water from the earth to the atmosphere, back to earth again, and it changes from a liquid to a gas, back into a liquid again. So let's get those notes down. Not on this one. Let's do it on this one. There we go. Water cycle. The continuous movement of water between the Earth's surface and the air, changing from liquid to gas to liquid. That means evaporation goes to condensation, condensation goes to precipitation, and then you just repeat that again. And that is our water cycle. So nitrogen cycle recycles nitrogen, carbon cycle recycles carbon, water cycle recycles water.